Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a deeply introspective, totally fascinating journey into the hidden mechanics of human motivation. We're pulling from Roman Gelperin's incredible work, Addiction, Procrastination, and Laziness. And look, Gelperin didn't just write this from some ivory tower. He actually wrote it after a personal breakdown, literally spending months acting as a neurodetective in his own bedroom. He was obsessively examining the exact micro-decisions happening in his own mind when his motivation just completely failed him. So our goal today? We're going to figure out exactly how to hack your brain.
Let me ask you something directly. Have you ever been sitting on the couch, just staring at your phone for hours, fully aware that you have an incredibly urgent task you should be doing right that very second, but you just feel paralyzed, right? Or maybe you've decided, okay, I'm firmly quitting this bad habit, only to find yourself doing it the very next day entirely on autopilot. We have absolutely all been there. It's frustrating, it's confusing, and honestly, it makes us feel completely out of control.
Well, it's time to hack your brain's evolutionary software and get that control back. In this explainer, our mission is to basically pry open the mind's engine room. We're going to look under the hood to see exactly why stopping a bad habit, or trying to start a good one, feels so mathematically impossible in the moment. We are going to expose the hidden forces actually driving your decisions.
Okay, let's dive into this by looking at 4 highly relatable patients who perfectly illustrate how our conscious control regularly just completely fails us. First up, there's Jim. Jim has 6 weeks to write an essay, procrastinates the entire time while feeling utterly guilty, and then writes the whole thing in 10 panicked hours. Then we have John, who quit smoking cold turkey, but on day 2 suddenly realizes he has a lit cigarette in his mouth without even remembering how he got it there. Pure autopilot. Next is Jansu, who plans to play his old PlayStation for just 30 minutes on vacation, but gets sucked into a multi-day gaming binge. And finally, Tom. Tom is perfectly healthy, but he sleeps 11 hours a day and takes a nap after every single email he sends.
Now, society typically looks at Jim, John, Jansu, and Tom and labels them as lazy, weak-willed, or just completely irrational. But the core message from Gelperin's analysis is actually incredibly destigmatizing. You are not irrational. These behaviors are not signs of a weak character, and they are definitely not a moral failing. You are simply losing a biological tug-of-war against ancient internal forces that are so much stronger than your conscious intentions. And frankly, they're a lot more stubborn too.
To really understand this tug-of-war, we have to look at how our brain totally separates an action from its result. Imagine you want to go running at 6 a.m. on a freezing winter morning. The logical result? Excellent health, a runner's high, and a huge surge of endorphins. You desperately want that result. But the action itself? The action requires kicking off a warm, cozy blanket, stepping onto a freezing cold floor, and running out into icy air. Your brain actually processes that glorious result and that miserable action entirely separately.
Standing right there between you and that beautiful long-term result is a massive barrier called activation energy. Think of this as the raw initial force required just to break your current inertia. It's the heavy lifting needed to transition from doing absolutely nothing to doing something, or from doing something super easy to doing something really hard.
And this brings us to the true villain of our explainer, the pleasure unconscious. This is a highly powerful, ancient biological software running right in the background of your mind. It evolved over millions of years with one very simple mandate: seek immediate pleasure and escape immediate pain. Now, it helped our ancestors run from predators and find sweet fruit, sure, but here's the catch. It hasn't had a software update in a million years. It doesn't understand university degrees, retirement funds, or complex health regimens. It literally only cares about right now.
So you might be asking, wait, what about my willpower? Shouldn't that save me? Well, Gelperin reveals a fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying truth about willpower. Willpower isn't some magical, endless force you can just summon on demand. Willpower is simply your conscious control over your attention, and your attention gets tired very, very fast. In a direct, head-to-head fight between a tired willpower and the ancient pleasure unconscious, the pleasure unconscious is going to win every single time.
And this brilliantly illustrates why getting off the couch to study feels mathematically impossible to our brains. Gelperin introduces this amazing concept called the dual cost of action. Basically, when you're watching a great show and need to get up to study, your pleasure unconscious isn't just fighting the pain of studying. It's also fighting the pain of giving up the fun show you're watching. You are literally paying double the pain. No wonder your brain paralyzes you and just forces you to stay right there on the couch.
Since fighting this ancient system directly is completely useless, we have to hack it. We need to manipulate the pleasure unconscious using its own rules against it. To do this, Gelpern equips us with a really powerful brain hacking toolkit. This includes the physical whiteboard, environmental control, employing emotion, and utilizing social pressure. Let's look at exactly how we can deploy these to take back control of our lives.
Let's start with the physical whiteboard. Now, you might think, why not just use a digital to-do app? It's because of a sneaky psychological mechanism called habituation. Your brain naturally filters out repetitive, unchanging environments just to save energy. So after a few days, that little app icon on your phone literally becomes digital wallpaper to your unconscious mind. You don't even see it. But a massive, physical whiteboard on your bedroom wall, constantly changing with bright colors, your brain just cannot ignore that. It forces your attention and willpower to actively engage every single time you walk into the room.
So the crucial point is this next tool, environmental control. Because the pleasure unconscious will always take the path of least resistance, you must architect your surroundings to exploit that exact tendency. You have to make the beneficial choice have almost zero activation energy, and make the destructive choice impossibly hard to start. You don't change your brain, you change the room your brain is sitting in. For example, if John-Soo unplugs his PlayStation and packs it away in the attic, or if John the smoker throws away all his lighters and ashtrays, they're fundamentally changing the environment their brain operates in, successfully breaking that autopilot loop before it even starts.
Let's see this in action by curing Jim, our massive procrastinator. Remember, Jim was trying to write an essay in a room completely full of easy pleasures: a phone, a TV, a comfy bed. His pleasure unconscious easily chose all of those over writing. To hack his brain, Jim has to lock himself in an empty library basement with no internet, no phone, and absolutely no distractions. By doing this, he is weaponizing boredom. When the pleasure unconscious realizes there is zero pleasure available in the room, the agonizing boredom actually becomes a pain it desperately wants to escape. And suddenly, writing that essay becomes the only pleasurable escape route available to him.
Now, what about Tom, who oversleeps and takes naps constantly? Well, Tom's environment was sending him the totally wrong biological signals because his desk was right next to his bed. To cure this, Tom needs to relocate. He must break the horizontal sleep signal by working in a public cafe or a co-working space. And here, he gets to utilize a brand new tool: social pressure. If Tom tries to take a nap in a busy cafe, the fear of public judgment creates immediate psychological pain. The pleasure unconscious calculates the math on that, and suddenly, staying awake and working is far less painful than being the weird guy drooling on a table in front of 50 strangers.
This brings us to perhaps the single most empowering takeaway from Gelpern's entire framework. You aren't lazy. You don't have a fundamentally broken character. You just engineered your environment poorly. Your failure to act is just a mechanical failure of your surroundings. It is absolutely not a moral failure of your soul. By redesigning the environment, you completely rewire the behavior. It's as simple as that.
Now, Gelpern is incredibly grounded about all this. He doesn't try to sell some magical fantasy where you suddenly become a perfect productivity robot. These brain hacks, the whiteboards, the weaponized boredom, the environmental controls, they're essentially just psychological crutches. Because ideally, we'd all find our true passion, where the work itself is immensely pleasurable and our pleasure unconscious actively runs toward it. But real life requires doing taxes, cleaning up, and finishing incredibly boring assignments. These hacks are the necessary crutches we use to limp across the finish line when we just lack that natural passion.
And that leaves us with a final, truly chilling thought to ponder. Today, we learned how to architect our environments to trick our pleasure unconscious for our own benefit. But right now, out in the world, tech companies with billions of dollars and thousands of neuroscientists are actively engineering perfectly tailored digital environments designed specifically to hack your pleasure unconscious and steal your attention. So ask yourself, as you move through your day, are you the architect of your own behavior, or are you just a pawn swimming in an environment engineered by someone else? The answer to that question will define the limits of your mental freedom. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer, and until next time, go take back your attention.